full documentary and format it for a natural, powerful male-style narration. MELES Zenawi, Part 1, The Mind, Vision, and Developmental Legacy of an African Leader by Haile Shishaye, a motivational historical documentary for the next generation of African leaders. Introduction. When a nation loses a mind, there are moments in the history of a nation when it loses more than a political leader. It loses a strategist, it loses a thinker, it loses a builder, and sometimes it loses a mind that had the capacity to see beyond the problems of its own generation. For Ethiopia, the death of MELES Zenawi on the 20th of August 2012 was one of those moments. MELES was only 57 years old. He had led Ethiopia through one of the most extraordinary periods of transformation in its modern history. His political career was controversial. His government was accused of restricting political freedoms, suppressing independent media, and using state power against opponents. Those criticisms are real, and they must not be erased from history. But neither should the extraordinary developmental transformation associated with his leadership be erased. The historical question is therefore not, was MELES perfect? He was not. The more important question is, what can Africa's young generation learn from the extraordinary intellectual capacity, strategic thinking, discipline, and developmental ambition of MELES Zenawi? That is the question this documentary explores. Number 1, from Adwa to the leadership of Ethiopia. MELES Zenawi was born in Adwa in 1955. As a young man, he became involved in the struggle against the Derg military regime of Mengistu Haile Mariam. He joined the Tigray People's Liberation Front in 1975 and eventually became one of the most important leaders of the armed movement. By 1988, he had become chairman of the TPLF and later emerged as the leading figure of the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front. When the Derg regime collapsed in 1991, MELES became president of the transitional government of Ethiopia. In 1995, he became prime minister. He would remain Ethiopia's dominant political leader until his death in 2012. But the transformation of MELES from guerrilla leader into developmental statesman is perhaps the most important part of his story. Many revolutionary leaders successfully seize power. Far fewer understand how to build an economy. Fewer still develop a coherent theory of development. MELES attempted to do both. Number 2, the extraordinary mind of MELES Zenawi. One of MELES Zenawi's most distinctive characteristics was his intellectual seriousness. He was not simply a politician who reacted to events. He attempted to understand the structural causes of poverty. He studied economics, political theory, and development. His thinking eventually developed into what became known as the Ethiopian Developmental State Model. MELES challenged the assumption that African countries could develop simply by adopting the economic prescriptions associated with the Washington Consensus. His argument was that the state had an important role in creating productive capacity, building infrastructure, directing investment, and accelerating structural transformation. His major intellectual work, African Development, Dead Ends and New Beginnings, argued explicitly for a different development paradigm for Africa. In his later academic work, he also developed his argument concerning states, markets, and the developmental state, challenging the idea that markets and governments should be viewed as mutually exclusive. And this is one of the greatest lessons young African leaders can learn from him. Do not merely copy other countries. Understand your own country's structural problems. Develop your own strategy. Think. Number 3, from one of the world's poorest countries to rapid growth. When MELES's government began its developmental drive, Ethiopia was among the poorest countries in the world. The transformation that followed was remarkable. The World Bank reported that Ethiopia's economy grew at an average annual rate of approximately 10.9% during the period associated with the country's major development acceleration. Poverty declined substantially. The national poverty rate fell from approximately 44% in 2000 to about 30% in 2011. The World Bank attributed the reduction primarily to agricultural growth, sustained economic growth, public investment in basic services, and rural safety net programs. Another World Bank assessment reported that Ethiopia's economy grew at an average annual rate of 10.6% between 2004 and 2011, approximately twice the average growth rate of sub-Saharan Africa during that period. These numbers matter, but the numbers alone do not explain the achievement. The more important question is, how did Ethiopia achieve this transformation? Number 4, Strategy 1, Agriculture First. MELES understood a fundamental reality. Ethiopia was overwhelmingly an agricultural society. Millions of people depended directly on smallholder agriculture. Therefore, development could not begin by pretending Ethiopia was already an industrial economy. The government invested heavily in agricultural productivity, extension services, roads, markets, fertilizer access, and rural development. The World Bank concluded that agricultural growth was the principal driver of poverty reduction during the period. Agricultural growth after 2005 was particularly important in reducing poverty. And the lesson is profound. A smart leader begins with the economic structure that actually exists, not the economy they wish existed. Number 5, Strategy 2, Infrastructure as the foundation of development. MELES understood something that many politicians overlook. You cannot build a modern economy without physical infrastructure. Roads connect farmers to markets. Electricity enables industry. Dams support energy generation. Telecommunications connect businesses. Schools build human capital. Health facilities create a healthier workforce. Therefore, Ethiopia embarked on an enormous infrastructure expansion. Road construction accelerated. Schools multiplied. Health facilities expanded. Electricity generation became a central national priority. The World Bank identified large-scale public infrastructure investment as a major component of Ethiopia's growth acceleration. Later academic research documented the enormous expansion of roads, schools, health facilities, and other public infrastructure under the EPRDF Developmental State Project. This was not simply construction for the sake of construction. The underlying idea was infrastructure creates productive